Right now on Morning News Now, heartbreak in the Hill Country. Texas Governor Greg Abbott announcing more than 170 people still missing as the death toll continues to climb following that historic flash flooding. And as the search for survivors continues, there are growing questions about how so many were caught off guard. All while a new flood emergency hit New Mexico and parts of the East Coast. We've got the latest. Also this morning, President Trump meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in an attempt to reach a deal on a ceasefire, as officials in Gaza say more than 100 people were killed yesterday. What leaders are now saying about a possible time frame for an agreement and what it could mean for some of the remaining hostages. Plus, a new warning from the White House. President Trump saying there will be no extensions on the new August 1st tariff deadline. But China is pushing back. Where things stand this morning with just over 3 weeks to go. And scientists say today will be one of the shortest days of the year, all because the Earth is spinning faster than normal. What does that mean and why is it happening? Well, we will talk with an expert to find out.
Not minutes shorter, just a very, very small amount of time. We'll dive into it. Good morning. Good to have you with us. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers, and we're going to start this hour with more deadly flooding out west. Now, just days after more than 100 people died in the flooding in Texas, at least 3 people in neighboring New Mexico were killed when fast-moving floodwaters hit their home. The river in Ruidoso, almost 19 feet in a matter of minutes, and washed through the town. Emergency crews conducted at least 85 swift water rescues to help people who were trapped in their homes and cars by the fast rising water. This happened in an area that had severe wildfires last year and is now more prone to flooding.
Powerful storms also caused problems here in the Northeast. Parts of eastern Pennsylvania were hit with hail and flooding. The winds were so bad, the main airport in Philadelphia had to halt all flights for several hours. And in New Jersey, the same system caused several trees to fall on homes, like this one near Red Bank. No serious injuries were reported, but the threat continues today. 24 million people from Pennsylvania to South Carolina are at risk for severe storms. So let's get right to your morning news now.
Meteorologist Michelle Grossman joins us now. Hi, Michelle. Good morning.
Good morning, guys. Yeah, and unfortunately, we are looking at more of the same in many spots today. Radar right now looking relatively quiet. It's the morning. We don't have that daytime heating going. We still do have a cluster of storms moving throughout portions of western Texas. We have a little storm system moving throughout parts of the mid-Atlantic, but that's really going to pick up as we head throughout the afternoon. And we're concerned about more flash flooding across the country in many spots. So let's take you throughout the day today here. We're looking at a lot of green on the map, at least the eastern half of the nation, with the possibility of some showers, some storms, some flash flooding. Remember, flash flooding comes very, very quickly, and then it recedes very quickly. We're going to see more showers and storms in New Mexico in that hard-hit area. We're going to see more showers and storms in the hard-hit areas of central Texas. And we're looking at still showers and storms a possibility in parts of the Northeast and mid-Atlantic into the Carolinas, not only today, but also tomorrow. We have a lot of moisture in the atmosphere across the country. We have triggering mechanisms that are unleashing this water. It's like a sponge that just gets squeezed out. And we're going to see that once again today. Starting with the East Coast storms, heat and humidity will fuel these storms in the mid-Atlantic, in parts of the Northeast and parts of the Carolinas, down to the Southeast, but also the Gulf Coast, the Tennessee Valley could see some heavy downpours as well. That will lead to the chance for some flash flooding in these areas. You notice on this futurecast, lots of bright colors here. That's indicating the chance for those heavy downpours. The ground is very saturated. We had a lot of rain in a lot of spots, so we don't need a lot of rain to see some flooding, especially in parts of New Mexico and Texas with the rivers, the streams, the creeks so swollen. So the severe weather threat, let's start out west because we're looking at portions of the northern plains and the central plains where you see Bismarck to Rapid City. That is the yellow area. That's where we could see some damaging winds, some hail, some tornadoes. And then as we slide to the east, 24 million Americans under the risk once again for severe storms. We're looking at damaging winds. That will be the main culprit once again. That was the story yesterday. Also downpours. We had a lot of impacts at the airports. We'll probably see that once again today in D.C., Philadelphia, down to Baltimore, Greensboro too. So where you see that yellow, guys, that's where we're looking at the chance for those strong storms. But I do want to emphasize we could see that flash flooding once again. Back to you.
Definitely hear it last night and see it here in New York. So, all right, Michelle, thank you so much.
Well, now let's get to the latest on the ground in Texas, where communities have begun the long road to recovery, and officials are now shedding light on the staggering number of people still missing nearly a week after those devastating July 4th floods.
They say more than 170 people are known to be missing across the entire Hill Country flood zone, 161 of them from hard-hit Kerr County. That includes 5 girls and a counselor from Camp Mystic who are still unaccounted for. At least 110 people have been killed in the floods. Some positive news: a break in the storms yesterday helped crews performing the difficult task of combing through all the debris, searching for survivors. Drier weather in that area is expected to continue today. NBC News correspondent Jay Gray has been covering this storm from Kerrville for days. He joins us now with a closer look at what comes next for survivors. Jay, good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Joe. Good morning, Savannah. And you're right. The survivors here now beginning what's going to be a difficult task of recovery here as the start of the 6th day of search, rescue, and recovery continues here along the Guadalupe. A lot of these teams working through areas like this, these huge downed trees. There is debris here. They pulled a car out of this area late yesterday here. You know, we talked for days about dozens missing. Officials had said there are a lot. They'd never really quantified it. The revelation from the governor yesterday, more than 170 across 6 counties here, really a gut punch to a community already reeling. As the massive search effort continues, this stunning revelation from Texas Governor Greg Abbott.
Just in the Kerr County area alone, there are 161 people who are known to be missing.
More than 170 unaccounted for across the entire flood zone. This tragedy defined by the staggering numbers, more than 110 dead.
I've lost friends, true friends, and we've lost precious families, precious children. I wish to God there was a way we could have warned them.
There are growing questions, tension, and frustration over whether there was adequate staffing at the National Weather Service and timely warnings before the storm and as the water started to rise. There is no debate about how difficult the cleanup and recovery here will be or how vital volunteers are as that process begins.
But we had 33 angels show up on Sunday out of nowhere.
Gutting his flood-ravaged home, cutting away soaked sheetrock, clearing out the waterlogged remnants of his life before the storm.
It's just, totally different aspect of volunteering and paying it forward. I don't know where people show up, just wanting to help. That's just amazing.
An effort many consider a responsibility and privilege.
Just to be Texans and just coming together and doing what we need to do.
With this part of Texas battered and hurting. Yeah, and you know, this is really, again, just the start of what's going to be along a very difficult recovery here. Joe, Savannah, this is an area that's going to need help for the entire way. It's going to be a rough go.
All right. Jay Gray, appreciate your reporting. Thank you so much. Let's talk more about that help. Let's bring in Larry Miner. He is the president of HEAL Corps. That's an emergency response organization that has been on the ground in Texas since the 4th of July disaster. Larry, thank you for joining us this morning. We appreciate it. Start by telling us just what it is you are doing in Texas and what your team found when you got there.
Well, when we showed up, we found massive flooding happening. It was a huge amount of water, and we started our search and rescue operations immediately.
Larry, tell us a little bit about those search and rescue operations, and I know the specific and unique tools that you have that can help with that.
Yeah, HEAL Corp is a unique organization. We have search dogs, we have our equine team, we have our drone teams, and we also have equipment coming in. So it's pretty elaborate setup right now that we have going on. We train weekly for this type of situation, and it's a massive undertaking at this moment.
What have you found so far? Have you been able to find any survivors?
We haven't, unfortunately, we haven't found any survivors. Yesterday we did find some of the missing.
How has your mission changed over these last few days as we near this week out nearly?
It's always evolving in these type of situations. When we first come here, we didn't realize the magnitude of the scale. So we're having to scale up. We have 57 men on the ground right now, and we're going to probably have to double that over the next day or so.
You have drones, I know. You have mules. Talk about what some of the biggest challenges are despite all those resources that you've brought in.
Just the terrain itself, it's all been rearranged. It's very difficult. You have these tight packed wood piles that we're having to sift through, pull them apart, put the dogs on to see if we get any hits from that. It's just a labor intense journey at this moment.
We just heard our colleague Jay Gray there say these people are going to need help every step of the way. We hear you mentioning you're going to maybe double your team on the ground. Any idea just how long a recovery like this could take?
Yeah, it's really hard to say. We were shocked yesterday when we heard how many more missing were. I mean, I would imagine at this point we're weeks at the minimum.
Have you seen anything like this before, Larry?
Yes, unfortunately I have. We just finished Helene in North Carolina, so this is exactly on the same scale of what Helene was. Not quite as large of an area, but definitely the loss is going to probably be similar to North Carolina.
Larry Minor, we appreciate your time this morning, and most of all appreciate everything that you and your team are doing. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, officials in Texas are facing tough questions over Kerr County's flood emergency alert system, or the lack of one. One former official says he proposed an upgrade to that alert system, but it was never implemented. NBC News correspondent Priscilla Thompson has the details.
This was my house, and the front porch was here.
Ricky Ray Robertson lost nearly everything.
There was a man and a woman about 11 o'clock here, and they were looking for their daughter. I can rebuild the house. They lost a little girl.
He says local officials drove down his street early that morning, blasting sirens. They woke you up?
Yes, ma'am.
But many here say they weren't properly alerted when floodwaters began to rapidly rise early on the 4th of July. Officials pressed by reporters about the response.
What happened? When did it happen? Was the emergency manager awake at the time? Did they push the button to issue an emergency alert?
Sir, it's not that easy when you just push a button, okay? There's a lot more to that. And we've told you several times.
Texas Governor Greg Abbott said the state was prepared.
We were ready, and if you heard a flash flood warning, no one would know that would be a 30-foot high tsunami wall of water.
One thing Kerr County doesn't have, a county-wide siren system. Former County Commissioner Tom Moser says he proposed adding one in the wake of a 2015 flood.
There was an objection to sirens because of false alarms.
Do you think sirens could have saved lives here?
Most likely so, yes. Yes, I'm confident they could have.
About 20 miles away in the town of Comfort, this is the sound residents heard as the fast-moving water rose. It was late morning there when many people were already awake. The town, which had recently installed a new alarm, had 0 fatalities. Daniel Morales pushed for the sirens.
It makes me feel good that I was able to do that, and that I'm part of it.
Ricky Ray Robertson says he wishes they'd had the same system in Kerr County. Do you think a universal siren would have made a difference?
Yeah, absolutely.
Priscilla Thompson, NBC News.
Well, now let's get you the latest economic news. Wall Street is continuing to react to President Trump's threat of higher tariffs on other countries.
It was a mixed bag yesterday for the market, with the Dow Jones and S&P down. The Nasdaq finished the day up slightly by about 6 points. The president posted on social media that there will be no extensions on that August 1st tariff deadline. That means trading partners now have just over 3 weeks to negotiate new trade deals with the U.S., or face those higher tariffs.
For more, of course, we're joined by Caleb Silver, editor-in-chief of Investopedia. Our friend Caleb, good morning. So tell us about the latest posturing from the White House here on this no extensions, August 1st deadline, just because there's been a lot of back and forth. What do we think right now?
No exemptions, no extensions. We thought today, July 9th, would be the day that tariffs go into effect after that 90-day pause. But now they're being pushed out, as you said, till August 1st. But yesterday we did hear from the president in a cabinet meeting saying he's going to slap 50% tariffs on copper imports. That's a huge deal. Copper is used across manufacturing and across industrial production, used in a lot of small machinery as well. So a 50% hike on copper, that drove it to its highest price ever, biggest spike since 1988. And he's threatening pharma tariffs now on pharmaceuticals as high as 200%, also potentially another additional 10% tariff on India for being part of the BRICS group of countries.
Let's talk about China then. Speaking of BRICS, the media there has warned the Trump administration against any deals that sideline China. We know there could be countermeasures. What is the relationship right now between the U.S. and China? How much does trade factor into that?
Yeah, trade is the big negotiating tool between these two countries. We're our biggest trading partners. So that's obviously a big deal. But the president is very angry with what he calls the BRICS, or what we call the BRICS countries. That's Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, because they had a meeting over the weekend, and he feels like the U.S. is being pushed out of that. Well, they are, and that's why you've seen that pressure on the dollar. So China, we thought negotiations were actually making progress a few weeks ago. We have not seen any developments since then, and that is obviously the big negotiating partner that we need to do a trade deal with. But right now, I think 14 letters went out on Monday to countries saying, you better come to the table with the deal. There's an additional 7 countries that are going to get letters this morning from Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. So this is far from over, but now we have a new deadline, and the markets, as you say, have been shrugging this off because there is no exact date or exact number to point to.
Let's talk also another category here, pharmaceuticals. The president mentioning in a cabinet meeting yesterday, those could face up to a 200% tariff, but not immediately, he says. That, though, I'm sure gets people paying attention because your medicines, things that you need, that really does have a direct consumer impact. What could we see?
Yeah, when you see the biggest drug companies in the world that we import drugs from, we're talking about GlaxoSmithKline, we're talking about Merck, et cetera. He's saying it could be a year and a half before those actually go into place, but he's going to see if those countries and the companies that operate within those countries come to the table with better deals. So 200% hike on pharmaceuticals is a huge deal for a lot of people, especially when he talked about lowering drug prices in his candidacy.
That'll get a lot of people's attention.
Absolutely.
Exactly. All right, Caleb, thank you so much.
Over in the Middle East, Israel continues to bombard Gaza this morning as the region waits for a breakthrough in the ongoing ceasefire talks that are taking place in Qatar. Gaza's director of field hospitals told NBC News more than 100 people were killed in Israeli strikes on Tuesday, among them women and children who were waiting for aid.
This comes as President Trump met with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu again last night in an attempt to push through a ceasefire hostage deal. Speaking before that, the president's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, said he was hopeful that the deal could be agreed to by the end of the week.
We are hopeful that by the end of this week, we will have an agreement that will bring us into a 60-day ceasefire. 10 live hostages will be released. 9 deceased will be released. We're meeting at the president's direction with all the hostage families to let them know. And we think that this will lead to a lasting peace in Gaza.
Here to talk more about all this, NBC News White House correspondent Monica Alba and NBC News International correspondent Raf Sanchez. Monica, let's start with you. The president met with Netanyahu for a second time last night following that dinner the other day. What came out of that?
Well, we know, Joe, that they did spend about an hour and a half together, and it's significant because, like you said, they met 2 evenings in a row now. When you see Steve Witkoff there say that he hopes for a lasting peace in Gaza, that is a very, very high bar that even the United States is cautiously optimistic about trying to predict, because even if there's a short-term agreement for this pause in the fighting and the release of some of those hostages, there are still major questions about what might happen after that. But it seems like some of the outstanding issues, specifically as it relates to more humanitarian aid getting into Gaza and some of the other security agreements for how this would go, are falling into place. So we know Steve Witkoff, who you just heard from there, is set to travel overseas again to resume some of these talks. And Prime Minister Netanyahu is continuing his travels here in Washington. He'll be meeting with lawmakers today and with the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, as they try to see if something can coalesce again by the end of the week. That's the hope.
Raf, let's bring you in here. I just mentioned Witkoff. He said he's hopeful that there could be a deal by the end of the week. What are we hearing from Israel and Hamas and mediators here? Does that time frame seem at all likely?
So you are seeing a real sense of confidence from the White House. You are hearing from Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu that he is open to an agreement. He is clearly under pressure from President Trump. Those multiple meetings focused on the situation in Gaza. He says he is open to an agreement, but he is also sticking to his original red lines, which is that this war will not end until Hamas is defeated. And it just remains unclear how you square that circle, reaching a temporary ceasefire and at the same time Israel saying that it will continue the fighting. Hamas has been saying since the beginning that it wants to see an agreement to end the war in its entirety. And the challenge for the mediators, the United States, Qatar, Egypt, is to try to find a way to bridge that gap. And it does seem here that Steve Witkoff feels that even though this is right now a proposal for a temporary 60-day ceasefire, Hamas seems to have the assurances it needs to agree to this in the hope that it will lead to some kind of final agreement.
So, Raf, while these talks continue, as we mentioned yesterday, was an especially deadly day in Gaza. We have crews, brave crews inside the enclave that recorded videos of yesterday's Israeli bombings. Tell us what they're reporting and how hospitals are coping with these mass casualties.
Yeah, guys, our crews on the ground just working tirelessly throughout this conflict, and they were at the site of 2 different strikes in Gaza City yesterday, both of them in the area around the Shifa hospital. That's the biggest hospital in the Gaza Strip, only very partially functioning at this point. In both of these strikes, our crews say you had, first one, a mother, a father, and a baby killed in this strike. And then the second one, both parents, but also 4 of their children, all under the age of 9, killed in these Israeli strikes up in Gaza City. You can see Gaza City is a wasteland now. To walk through it is to walk through sort of canyons of urban rubble. We did reach out to the IDF about those strikes, trying to understand what it was they were targeting. We haven't yet heard back. Guys.
Monica, before we let you both go, I do also want to ask about Iran. We heard the president discuss those bombings of the nuclear facilities yesterday. Do we think we're going to see these talks that keep being referenced with Tehran happen anytime soon?
It's unclear. Really, we have heard the president continually talk about whether these talks are going to be scheduled, whether he would attend them, whether it would be his representatives, where it would happen. So the details are still a bit fuzzy, but it was the president again who said he believes there will be some talks. But at the same time, it was the president who a few weeks ago at NATO said, I don't know if another nuclear agreement with Iran is even necessary, but I may send my Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, to discuss that and to see what kind of terms could be negotiated. This is something that certainly Prime Minister Netanyahu was praising the president for, the U.S. actions on the nuclear facilities and those bombs that were dropped, the bunker busters in Iran. So this is something that the president, I think, is trying to project some strength on, but it's unclear whether any diplomatic path here is actually set for this major, major relationship.
All right, Monica and Raf, a lot to cover this morning. Thank you both.
Thank you. Well, there's good news this morning for the city of Philadelphia. A deal has been reached with thousands of municipal workers to end that strike that had been going on since the start of the month. We've been showing you this. It's been impacting many of Philly's city services, like trash removal. Remember these mountains of garbage we've been showing you? Also 911 dispatch and water service impacted. There's no word yet on the terms of the deal, but our NBC affiliate there reports the union representing the workers is actually not happy about the agreement. We will have much more on this deal throughout the day here on NBC News Now.
We have a lot more to get to on Morning News Now, including why the Earth is now spinning a little faster than usual. After the break, we're going to sit down with an expert to walk us through the celestial speed up and what it means for all of us.
But up first, President Trump unloads on Russian leader Vladimir Putin after promising more military aid to Ukraine. We have the latest from the war-torn region next.
We are back with a Ukraine U-turn. President Trump now says he will send more weapons to Ukraine to help in its war with Russia. The reversal comes days after the Pentagon had paused shipments. All this as the president's frustration with Russian President Vladimir Putin appears to be growing. NBC News senior White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez has the latest.
As the fighting in Ukraine intensifies with the largest Russian airstrikes of the war underway, the Trump administration is reversing course, sending more weapons to Ukraine and growing increasingly frustrated with Vladimir Putin.
We get a lot of bull thrown at us by Putin, for you want to know the truth.
It's a dramatic shift in tone for the president after years of praising the Russian leader.
I said he was a strong leader, which he is.
And months after erupting in anger against Ukrainian President Zelensky.
You don't have the cards right now.
The new reversal comes after President Trump spoke with Putin and Zelensky by phone last week, just days after the Pentagon held up a shipment of U.S. weapons for Ukraine, citing concerns about low stockpiles. That decision blindsided the State Department and European allies, according to multiple sources with knowledge of the matter. It's not clear who ordered the pause.
Putin is not treating human beings right. He's killing too many people. So we're sending some defensive weapons to Ukraine, and I've approved that.
So who ordered the pause last week?
I don't know. Why don't you tell me?
The Kremlin said today sending more U.S. weapons is not in line with attempts to promote a peaceful settlement. On the campaign trail, Trump frequently bragged he could end the war in Ukraine in one day.
Within 24 hours.
A claim he later said was sarcasm. Now his patience with Putin appears to be wearing thin.
He's very nice all the time, but it turns out to be meaningless.
Our thanks to Gabe for that report. Let's keep this conversation going with NBC News military analyst Colonel Jack Jacobs. Colonel Jacobs, good morning. Always great to see you. So the president now promising more of these defensive weapons to Ukraine following this reported pause in shipments. First, just do we know what type of weapons the U.S. could send?
Well, principally, we're talking about Patriot anti-missile aircraft systems. They were ready to go in. They were poised to go in, and then the pause occurred. The Ukrainians need lots and lots of these because the Russians are sending an enormous number of drones and missiles into Kiev and other places in Ukraine, and have increased their attacks. And those attacks have increased even further since the pause. But we're talking about anti-aircraft and anti-missile systems, which can defend against the Russians.
So, Colonel, as Gabe reported there, officials told NBC News these shipments were paused because of concerns over the U.S. military's depleting stockpiles. That surprise you at all? And does this move by the president tell us perhaps those stockpiles are still healthy?
Well, you can never have too much ammunition, too many anti-aircraft weapons. You always more, and there's no doubt about the fact that our defense industrial base could use quite a bit of tuning up. We don't produce nearly as many munitions and defensive weapons as we really need. But it's not true that we were depleting supplies to the point where we're endangering our own national defense. The other vitally important that we send to Ukraine are 155 millimeter artillery shells, which are used up by the thousands every day. We've used up a lot of them. We've sent a lot of them to Ukraine, but we still have plenty. The defense industrial base is responding by producing more, but we still need more.
So, Colonel Jacobs, will these extra weapons to Ukraine make a difference, do you think, in the war with where things stand on the ground right now?
Well, they will make a difference in two ways. The first is on the battlefield. They will be able to defend against the Russian attacks. More significantly, these weapons will help do what everybody would like to see happen, and that is bring the parties to the table to have a negotiated settlement. Sometime about the time that the war began, Kissinger, late Henry Kissinger, said this will ultimately end at the conference table where Ukraine and Russia will trade off to get of Ukraine in exchange for the Russians holding on to whatever they will have seized in the Donbass. At the moment, the Russians are trying their best to seize as territory, Ukrainian territory, as they possibly can, in order to have a stronger bargaining position when the war ends. So it's incumbent on the United States to ensure that Ukraine does not cede any more territory so that Ukraine can have a stronger bargaining position. What the pause has done is exactly the opposite of what the Pentagon thought it would do. The Pentagon thought it would ingratiate themselves to Putin and Putin would come to the table sooner, but it's had exactly the opposite effect, which is why the White House has now resumed shipments. So this is all about who's going to have the stronger position at the bargaining table, if, as and when there is a bargaining table to go to.
Colonel Jacobs, as always, we appreciate your expertise. Thanks for your time this morning.
More international news now. The ICC has issued arrest warrants for top Taliban leaders in Afghanistan over attacks on women and gender minorities.
Matt Bodner joins us now with that and more world news in 60 seconds. Good morning, Matt.
Savannah, Joe, good morning. The International Criminal Court has issued arrest warrants for the supreme leader of the Taliban and the head of Afghanistan's Supreme Court on charges of persecuting women and girls since the group seized power 4 years ago. Other Taliban leaders were also included in the warrants. They are on charges of persecuting, quote, other persons non-conforming with the Taliban's policy on gender, gender identity, or expression. The court says the warrants are an important vindication and recognition of the rights of Afghan women and girls. Moving along now to Bangladesh, leaked audio suggests that a deadly crackdown on student protests last year was authorized by then Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. The audio was leaked online back in March and features a phone call in which Hasina says she authorized her security forces to use lethal weapons against the protesters wherever they were found. Prosecutors plan to use the recording as evidence against Hasina, who has since fled to India, for a special tribunal on crimes against humanity. We'll wrap up this hour in Mexico. President Claudia Sheinbaum has labeled recent protests against gentrification and mass tourism as, quote, xenophobic. In recent days, demonstrators in Mexico City have taken to the streets with slogans like, quote, gringo, stop stealing our home. Many locals feel they've been priced out of their neighborhoods by short-term rentals like Airbnb, and also a government effort to lure in more digital nomads. This echoes a sentiment we've seen a lot recently in Europe, in particular in countries like Spain. Back to you guys.
All right, Matt, thank you so much.
Well, here is a fact that may surprise you. Scientists predict that today could end up being the shortest day ever recorded.
And the reason, they say, it's because Earth is spinning faster than normal, around 1.5 milliseconds faster.
Joining us now to explain what is going on here is Dr. Paul Sutter. He's a cosmologist at Johns Hopkins University and also the author of the book, How to Die in Space. Doctor, good morning. We always love when you join us. Thanks for being here. So this is thought to be happening because of the moon's position, I think. Is that right? Walk us through what's going on.
Yes, that's exactly right. The best way to think about this is like a spinning merry-go-round, like on the playground, and you've got a bunch of kids on it. We're all having a great time, and you're outside pushing it. So the moon's gravitational pull can help speed up the Earth or help slow down the Earth, depending on how far away the moon is and where it is on its orbit.
So a millisecond or two faster doesn't, at least to me, seem like that big of a deal, especially if you've ever ridden on a New York subway. Will we notice anything here on the ground?
No, it's a millisecond. We've already gone through several thousand milliseconds in this interview already, so you're not going to notice it in your day-to-day life. But I never miss an opportunity or encourage people to miss an opportunity to think about the physics happening literally underneath our feet all the time. The Earth is not constant. The rotation of the Earth is not the same every single day, all the time. It's constantly shifting from all sorts of factors and forces.
Is there anything concerning about this? Like, is it bad that it's speeding up? Could it have long-term effects if it starts speeding up more frequently?
No, this is totally normal. This was going to happen with or without us anyway. It's not going to change anything. It is a slight buck in the trend. Actually, over billions of years, the Earth's rotation is slowly getting slower. In fact, about 1 to 2 billion years ago, a day was only about 19 to 20 hours long. And slowly over time, our days are getting longer. The moon is slowly getting further apart. So in like 500 million years, you might notice and you might have to adjust your circadian rhythm, but over a typical human lifetime, it's not going to be a problem.
So here's the deal. More shorter days are expected. We got July 22nd and August 5th, so these milliseconds are really going to add up. Scientists at the U.S. Naval Observatory... Yeah, exactly. Scientists at the U.S. Naval Observatory in Washington think that they're going to likely have to subtract a leap second for the first time ever, but that won't happen until 2029 because of this. Explain that. What does that mean for us? I mean, do our clocks have to become a second slower? How do we do this?
Yeah, exactly like we will add a day during a leap year. And that's because we like our days to be 24 hours long. We like our dates on the calendar to match up with the seasons, with what we expect them to do. And if sometimes we just have to recalibrate because the rotation of the Earth is not exactly 24 hours long. So every once in a while, we have to play a little game of catch up so that everything makes sense and all of our calendars and all of our clocks and all of our normal rhythms match up with what we're used to.
It's crazy to me that this is even able, like, to be figured out. And I know that's just, like, revealing how much I don't understand, but just, like, that you're even able to figure out, like, how fast, and it's because of the moon. Why is it something that scientists want to know and keep an eye on?
One is just for fun, because as scientists, we like to observe what's happening in nature, and that brings a lot of joy in its own right. It also gives us a chance to study the inner workings of the Earth, because how mass within the Earth, how all the stuff is shifted around affects its rotation rate. So by measuring the rotation rate, we can figure out how stuff is shifting around inside the Earth.
Huh. Every time you're here, my mind's blown. Every time you're here, I think that's how I end. Huh. Dr. Paul Sutter, great to see you. Fascinating stuff. Thank you. Well, coming up, the rising risk of liver damage linked to some popular herbal supplements.
How one woman is sounding the alarm after seeing a report which she says saved her life. That story next.
We are back with a look at the rise of liver injuries tied to some popular herbal supplements. Back in May, NBC did a story on this subject, and one woman says that reporting saved her life. NBC News correspondent Emily Ikeda has the details.
I was noticing like just a hint of yellowness.
57-year-old Katie Mohan thought she was doing everything right. She ate healthy foods, exercised regularly, and when she wanted to reduce inflammation and wrist pain, she added a turmeric supplement to her routine. But she felt worse, and within 2.5 months was in the ER.
Have you ever had a health scare like this?
Never.
She said it was our reporting on supplement-induced liver injuries that made her prioritize getting to a doctor.
I felt nauseous. I started itching.
Mohan had similar symptoms.
Just a light bulb went off in my head, and I said, oh my gosh, I wonder if this is what's wrong with me.
What do you think would have happened if you didn't come across our report?
I don't even want to think about what could have happened. Who knows if I'd be sitting here today.
Oh, this is very alarming.
Her liver enzymes had reached 60 times normal levels, according to her hepatologist.
It was very serious. It was just one step before significant liver damage necessitating transplant evaluation.
While still rare, numerous studies show cases like Mohan's are on the rise, and turmeric's suspected role has increased markedly.
I think when people hear liver damage, they might think of, okay, alcohol could be playing a role, maybe acetaminophen, but supplements, I don't think that comes to top of mind for people.
You're absolutely right, because the misconception is that herbal products are absolutely innocent. Katie got this turmeric along with black pepper. That increases the levels of this ingredient in the blood.
There's limited regulation and research around herbal supplements in particular. So while Mohan was taking what the bottle told her, her doctor says at more than 2,200 milligrams of turmeric extract, it was way too much.
I had no idea that I could cause that much harm that quickly to my body.
Now sharing her experience and the chance it could impact one other life. The way this story, she says, touched hers.
It potentially saved my life.
Emily Ikeda, NBC News, New York.
Time now for our weekly medical checkup. And speaking of liver health this morning, we're looking at a new study raising concerns about the use of CBD, suggesting even low doses could affect the organ.
Yeah, we've also got new research showing that climate change might be impacting more than just the planet. It could be reducing the nutrition of the foods that we eat.
NBC News medical contributor Dr. John Torres joins us to break it all down. All right, so let's start with this new study. It's raising red flags about CBD, which is pretty much every other storefront here in New York these days.
Yeah.
Researchers found healthy adults given CBD experienced elevated liver enzyme levels. What more can you tell us?
And this is something we've kind of been looking at lately, and they did a study, 201 volunteers, and they gave them 5 milligrams per kilogram, which is basically 350 milligrams for an average-sized adult. And so that's an average dose. And they wanted to see what happened. And over about a 4-week period, they ended up finding out that 1 in 20 of the healthy adults, so 5% of these people ended up having liver enzymes that were 3 times higher than normal, just in a month time period. Wow. And so because of that, they had levels sometimes that were even 10 times higher than normal. And so these are very high levels of liver enzymes. Some people in the study actually had to end up stopping the study because they were starting to get liver symptoms from liver failure symptoms. And so, again, this is something you want to be very careful with. So what are the doctor's orders here? Well, essentially, treat it like medication. So number one, you want to make sure that your liver enzymes are okay going into taking CBD. So talk to your doctor about where you've been in the past with that, and then consult your doctor. It is a medicine, essentially, so treat it like a medicine. It can actually interfere with other medicines, and now we know it can possibly hurt your liver, so you want to be careful.
Gosh, I can't believe how fast that happened for some people
Very
in that
quickly.
city. All right, Dr. Torres, let's talk about that other one I mentioned, climate change impacting the nutritional value of things like vegetables. What's going on here?
And this is definitely climate change. And if you remember your high school biology, photosynthesis. And so what's happening right now is with photosynthesis, carbon dioxide is one of the main drivers behind that. Because of increasing carbon dioxide, these leafy plants are getting 20% bigger, but because they're growing so fast, they're having less nutrients, less antioxidants, and in particular less calcium. So you're getting bigger vegetables with smaller benefits. So what are the doctor's orders here? Well, the doctor's orders are essentially to realize that is happening. Number one, that the vegetables might be bigger, they might look bigger, but there also could be less nutrients. So variety is the key. You want to make sure, especially with vegetables, you have a lot of variety. And don't give up on the veggies, because people I've talked to about the stories are like, oh, I shouldn't eat vegetables anymore. No, absolutely not.
They're just looking for an excuse.
They are, 100%.
Not your doctor's order.
So still eat the veggies.
All right, ticks, ants, and wasps, they're on like their summer concert tour right now. We got warmer temps, shifting ecosystems, so they're showing up in places that we haven't seen them before. It sounds like we're hearing more tick-borne illnesses. What's going on?
And that is true. You're hearing more because there are more, because the ticks are moving into different areas. And you can see here with ticks, they're climate-driving spread. So because of climate change, ticks are going in more areas with more diseases. You want to make sure you check yourself for a tick every day, but remove the tick correctly. And that means with tweezers, slowly, not pushing on the stomach, but getting down by the head at the skin and pulling back slowly.
I just removed 4 in the last weekend from 3 friends and 1 from my dog. They hang on, though, when you're trying to pull them out.
That's why you have to pull it really slowly and just pull it out. Oof. And then clean the area off, soap and water. Just keep an eye on it. Look particularly for target rashes, which is that red rash, it looks like a target, or any other symptoms to be seen for that. As far as ants, mostly you have to worry about red ants. Black ants bite too, but red ants can have some venom that's a little more, that hurts a little bit more, so you want to keep an eye on that. It can cause the itching, the swelling, the allergic responses that are there too. And again, the same thing here. It's going to be a common theme. Wash the area, soap and water, cool compresses. Make sure you do that as well. And then with wasps, particularly if you're allergic, you want to have an EpiPen with you. Wasps are nasty because they don't leave the stinger behind, so they can sting you multiple times. And so you want to be careful with them. So avoid them, especially with kids. I always just tell my kids all the time, if you don't bother them, they probably won't bother you. So just be careful.
I'm just imagining like a tick with a banjo. Or something. I just can't get the visual out of my head. Thank you very much, Dr. John.
The wasp is playing.
Yeah, like
keyboard.
Okay,
All right. That means the answer's profession, right?
They're harmless. There you go. Thank you, Dr. John.
A major change coming to an airport near you.
Why, after nearly 2 decades, you'll no longer have to take off your shoes at TSA checkpoints. That is next. Welcome back. For many travelers, it's now a little less stressful getting through security at airports across the country. For the first time in nearly 20 years, the TSA is allowing passengers to keep their shoes on. NBC News senior correspondent Tom Costello has the details.
It's a major security shift at TSA checkpoints nationwide. Effective immediately, all passengers can keep their shoes on. No need to screen them separately. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem says 94% of passengers now have real IDs, improving identity confirmation. And TSA procedures and checkpoints have improved.
We've added new scanners, new technologies, more TSO officers in some areas.
The TSA began screening shoes for explosives in 2006 after shoe bomber Richard Reed attempted to blow up a flight from Paris to Miami in 2001. While pre-check passengers have been able to leave their shoes on, removing shoes has been a top complaint among all passengers.
For women, it's like, ew, I don't want to touch the floor.
In December, we saw how detecting explosives is still a top priority at the TSA range in Huntsville. This is what's left, a piece of a shoe and the handle from a suitcase. The bottom line is this would have been catastrophic, and the TSA and the FBI continue to focus on mitigating the threat of potentially catastrophic explosives. Security experts believe the terror threat remains real, even as new technology provides better detection and shoes stay on. Secretary Noem says TSA pre-check will remain valuable for passengers who don't want to remove their life jackets or laptops from their bags, and she insists passenger security will not be compromised. Back to you.
All right, Tom, thank you.
Let's get you some Wall Street headlines now. This morning, Apple is reportedly fighting for its right to broadcast F1 races.
CNBC's Savannah now has that and some other money news. Savannah, good morning.
Hey, Joe. Hey, Savannah. Good morning to you. Yeah, that's right. Apple is reportedly in talks to secure the U.S. broadcast rights for Formula One when the contract comes up next year. And that's following the success of F1, the movie. Now, the film, which stars Brad Pitt, has made nearly $300 million since opening 10 days ago. The Financial Times says Apple is challenging ESPN, which currently airs F1 races. Earlier this year, reports said Netflix is among the contenders, and that's thanks to the popularity of its Formula One Drive to Survive series. Meanwhile, Tim Cook's right-hand man is retiring. Apple Chief Operating Officer Jeff Williams will step down from that role after roughly a decade and leave the company later this year. Williams, who was seen as a possible successor to Cook, oversaw Apple's supply chain and design team, as well as the Apple Watch and the company's health initiatives. He's being replaced by Sabi Khan. That's the current senior VP of operations. Apple says the moves are part of a long-planned succession. And more than a quarter of Americans have a side hustle. That is actually the lowest percentage since 2017 and down from 36% last year. So a new Bankrate survey finds more than a third of those say they use at least some of the extra cash to pay for living expenses, and they earn an average of $885 a month, but the median is just $200 a month. Now, the most common side hustles are online sales, followed by food delivery, crafts, and pet sitting or dog walking, guys.
All right, every little bit helps.
There you go.
Thanks, Savannah. Appreciate it. Coming up, taking the plunge from more than 60 feet in the air.
After the break, we'll take you to the Great Lakes, where divers are ascending to great heights for a first-of-its-kind challenge. That's next.
Welcome back. We are ending the hour with a deep dive into the first ever diving competition to hit the Great Lakes. It's called the Superior High Dive Challenge, and it's part of the Festival of Sail happening in the great city of Duluth, Minnesota.
Some of the world's best divers will show off their skills from a soaring 66-foot platform. Jeffrey McClure from our NBC affiliate KBJR in Minnesota has the details.
3, 2, 1,
Well, we're doing something that's very unusual. You know, we're an unusual sport, high diving, and we've used all kinds of different towers.
Minnesotan Dana Kunze has spent his entire life jumping into water. For the past 4 decades, he's also constructed some of the most elaborate diving boards, including the newest addition to Duluth.
We've got to clear some apparatus that's right bumped up against the dock wall here. We've created an overhang that's going to go up on the top of this scaffold.
The 8-time world high diving champion spent the entire day, along with USA Diving, constructing the more than 65-foot tower on the seawall, one scaffold at a time.
So we had to work out how to keep it really slim
And Dana came up with the idea of the guy wires, which are keeping it stable. So it's actually really strong up there.
You need a solid surface, to start off with. You need a place to guy it to hold it up soundly. You've got to have great divers that aren't scared to go up and dive off of it.
And they definitely have the divers, namely Owen Weymouth, who has been planning the event for nearly a year and was honored to be the first to make the jump.
You actually hit the water very fast from this height, about 46 miles per hour.
A challenge so great, even the world record holder can see how crazy it looks.
There he goes. Good jump. He's in good shape. He knows where it is.
One of the guys that's coming out here is going to be doing like 5 or 6 somersaults. I mean, it's crazy what these kids are doing now. So they look at my world record and go, you're crazy. And I look at them spinning and twisting and flipping like that, and I go, you're crazy.
Don't belly flop. All right. Our thanks to Jeffrey McClure for that report. In all, there'll be 10 divers taking the plunge this Friday and Saturday. In Duluth, you get about a 2-week window where there's no ice on the water. Kidding. So, anyway.
Funny.
Looks like fun. All right, that does it for this hour of Morning News Now.
But stay with us. The news continues right now. Good morning. Thanks for joining us this Wednesday. I'm Savannah Sellers.
And I'm Joe Fryer. Happening right now on Morning News Now, a devastating split screen of severe weather wreaking havoc across the country. In New Mexico, terrifying flash floods tearing through a remote mountain community, killing at least 3. Well, in Texas, more than 160 people are still missing after those 4th of July floods. So far, they've taken more than 100 lives. We've got the very latest on rescue efforts. Also this morning, President Trump ramping up his global trade tirade. He's pushing back that 90-day tariff deal deadline from today to August 1st, while teasing fresh levies on vital import goods like copper and prescription drugs. It all comes as the commander-in-chief fires off a profanity-laced attack on Russia's Vladimir Putin for defying calls to end the war in Ukraine. We are covering it all. Plus, the worsening health crisis taking a serious toll on many young Americans. More on a troubling new report that's shedding a light on not only an obesity emergency among kids, but a mental health one, too. And later in the hour, it is a summer streaming sensation that's got hungry audiences positively hooked on what lurks deep beneath the ocean's surface. Now, Hollywood is looking to make a splash with a big bet on sharks. It all comes on the 50th anniversary of Jaws. Good to have you with us. Let's start this hour with the severe weather that is sweeping across the U.S. Here on the East Coast, more than 27 million people from Pennsylvania to South Carolina are at risk today. Last night, strong storms toppled trees and caused flooding in eastern Pennsylvania and New Jersey. The winds were so strong, they halted all flights in the main airport at Philadelphia for several hours, the storms causing large hail in some suburbs.
And then meanwhile, out west, the search and cleanup, of course, continues in Texas after floodwaters there killed more than 100 people. And now we know more than 170 are still missing. And then in New Mexico, 3 people are dead after flash floods hit their home yesterday. The banks of the river in Ruidoso rose almost 19 feet in a matter of minutes, flooding the town. That is where NBC News correspondent Steve Patterson is this morning and has this report.
Yeah, these heavy rains here in southern New Mexico causing devastating flash flooding, sending cars into homes, sweeping homes away, and sparking at least a few dozen swift water rescues. And as we're coming on air, we're learning at least 3 people did not survive this.
This morning, another terrifying and fast-moving flash flood. In New Mexico, at least 3 people dead after waters rose in Ruidoso. This home in the mountain community ripped off its foundation and carried off by the water.
Oh no! Oh no! Oh my gosh!
Caitlin Carpenter watched her friend's house get swept away.
It was terrifying, honestly. I was not expecting that. I was really shaken up.
The flood came on quickly. 8 inches of rain falling in just 80 minutes. Eventually, the river cresting at a record 20 feet.
We are all backing out of the water's way.
The state's governor signing an emergency declaration. Roads closed throughout the area. This sped up time lapse showing how high the water rose in a local business. The same mountain town was hit by a devastating wildfire just last year that killed at least 2 people and destroyed hundreds of homes in the area. Burn scars from that blaze likely exacerbating Tuesday's flooding. Heavy rains and extreme weather pounding other areas throughout the country. From the Midwest, where floodwaters rose in Chicago, to flood watches in North Carolina, already hard hit this week, and thunderstorms rolling in further up the East Coast, downing power lines. And once again throwing off the busy summer travel season, causing ground stops at several of the country's key airports. Over 8,000 flights delayed yesterday, as yet another day of wild weather sweeps the country and another community recovers.
And we're just learning among the confirmed dead, a man in his 40s or 50s, a 7-year-old boy, and a 4-year-old girl. This community still covered in ruins in places, still shrouded in darkness, already heartbroken. Back to you.
All right, Steve, thank you so much.
Let's get a closer look now at what to expect from today's forecast with your morning news now weather.
Yeah, meteorologist Michelle Grossman, she is following all of this extreme weather for us. Hey, Michelle, good morning.
Good morning, guys. And we're going to see more extreme weather today. We have the risk for flash flooding in many spots today. One of those spots being where Steve is in New Mexico. We could see showers and storms igniting once again this afternoon. Another spot, Central Texas, where we're going to see daytime heating sparking those showers and storms. They will be scattered, really hard to pinpoint where they will pop. But still, we will see scattered storms across that area. And then notice this map. Lots of green in the eastern half of the nation. So many spots under the risk of showers and storms. The Northeast, the Mid-Atlantic, down to the Carolinas could see flash flooding also because we have a lot of moisture in the air. We have a triggering mechanism with that front there, and that could bring the chance of some showers and storms. Lots of humidity out there. So East Coast storms first. We have the heat and humidity. Temperatures once again into the 90s. You factor the humidity. It feels hotter than that. We have that front that you see on the map here, and that's going to trigger storms once again, much like we saw yesterday. The tornado risk will be low. It won't be zero, though. We could see some hail. That's on the lower end, too. The greatest risk would be damaging winds like what we saw yesterday, and also heavy, heavy downpours leading to flash flooding. So that will be the story on Wednesday and also on Thursday. We're going to keep the same story in place on Thursday. Severe weather threat notice back to the west and parts of the northern plains, the central plains, Bismarck, Rapid City, where you see that yellow there, even to North Platte. Could see some stronger storms later on today. Could see some damaging winds, could see some hail, and also the chance of a few tornadoes. Then as we head towards the east, 24 million Americans under the risk of storms once again today. Winds gusting up to 60 miles per hour, isolated hail, isolated tornadoes from D.C. to Roanoke, Greensboro. That includes Philadelphia, too. So if you are traveling today, there was a ground stop in Philadelphia today. You want to make sure you call ahead because we could see some impacts at the airports. Flood alerts stretch from Philadelphia all the way down to parts of the Carolinas. 27 million people impacted. The ground is saturated. The water table is high. That just means it's like a sponge. If we get any of these storms, we could see heavy, heavy downpours leading to the flooding. And then tomorrow, we're going to kind of keep that same pattern in place. Unfortunately, we're looking at the northern plains, the central plains once again, for a severe weather risk, and also into the east, mainly now into the Carolinas tomorrow, where you see that yellow, Raleigh, and also Columbia, guys. 12 million at risk tomorrow for severe weather. So unfortunately, this pattern does continue, and we will be watching it very closely. Bill will be covering the shows later on this afternoon, and he will keep us up to date in terms of the weather.
All right. Michelle, thanks. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, let's get more from the Texas Hill Country, where officials say more than 170 people are still missing. And this is as the death toll continues to rise. NBC News correspondent Morgan Chesky has more from his own hometown of Kerrville, where he has been covering this story for us for days.
Yeah, good morning. And those numbers are equal parts staggering and heartbreaking. Authorities confirming at least 110 people have died as a result of this flooding. And here in Kerr County, there are at least 160 people still missing. And that is one of the primary reasons that crews continue to go up and down this stretch of river, hoping to bring those families any kind of closure. This morning in the grief-stricken Texas Hill Country, hope of finding survivors from Friday's devastating flooding is fading. Yet despite the odds, volunteers like Huntley Dantzler refusing to give up.
Biggest thing we're looking for is we're looking for places where there has not been foot traffic.
These before and after satellite images providing a glimpse at the enormous scope and scale of the historic disaster. Local officials facing questions about why so many were caught off guard by the fast-rising floodwaters.
Was the emergency manager awake at the time? Did they push the button to issue an emergency alert?
Sir, it's not that easy when you just push a button.
Did it happen, sir?
I can't tell you at this time.
Governor Abbott stressing the state was prepared.
Who's to blame? Know this. That's the word choice of losers. Let me explain one thing about Texas. and that is Texas, every square inch of our state, cares about football. The losing teams are the ones that try to point out who's to blame. The way winners talk is not to point fingers.
It comes as records obtained by NBC News shows that Camp Mystic had an emergency plan in place. Texas officials signing off on it just 2 days before the floods. Meanwhile, we're learning more about the victims, including 9-year-old Lainey Landry, a Camp Mystic attendee. Her family's church posting a photo from Lainey's first communion. This photo showing one of the cabins full of girls that was overwhelmed. Several of the children now confirmed dead. Some young survivors sharing their stories, like 10-year-old Lucy Kennedy.
I woke up to really loud thunder. I just had a gut feeling that something bad was about to happen.
Lucy, a Mystic camper just like her mother Wynn, recounting the traumatic experience from Friday morning.
People from different cabins started coming to our porch and yelling wake up and go to rec hall because there's a flood.
Evacuated by helicopter, the 10-year-old soon looked down on a summer paradise turned Texas tragedy. And meanwhile, the number of missing here in Kerr County could unfortunately still go up. And here's the reason why. Authorities are working off of lists of registrations from properties up and down this river. They're asking any family who believes a loved one may have been lost in the storm to contact them, and they could add that name to what is unfortunately becoming a growing list here, keeping these search efforts incredibly busy. We'll send it back to you.
All right, Morgan Chesky, thank you for your reporting.
Let's bring in Lorena Guillen. She and her husband owned the Blue Oaks RV Park and Restaurant in Kerrville, which was overtaken by the floodwaters on July 4th. Lorena, we appreciate you taking the time to speak with us. I know it's been a few days and you're still processing so much. I understand this business was your retirement plan. How are you and your husband holding up?
Well, we're holding the best we can with the support of our friends in the community. It's so amazing that it helps so much. I mean, I've gotten so many hugs in the last few days than I've had in the whole year. And that really warms my heart, you know?
If you wouldn't mind sort of walking us through what you went through. We understand you were woken up in the middle of the night by lights from rescue crews. What happened when you looked outside, when you went outside? What did you see happening at your park?
It was pitch black. My husband and I were running down the hill to the RVs, and all I can see was the lights of the rescue team. They had 2 boats, and they were trying to get into the river because there was, the RVs being swept away. And then the fire department was coming in, and my husband and I, I was banging on doors, my husband running to the water to try to save the family. The father was walking towards us, and he was holding his 2 babies. And he was trying desperately to get across. But the water was just very, very high at that point, probably around your waist. And my husband got into the water, like I said, and then a wave came and took them both. My husband kept yelling at him, "Throw me your baby." But it was just too fast, too much. My husband was lucky to be snagged by a rebar, so he could... He was able to get out.
But for some of those others, they weren't able to get out?
No, we lost, we had registered a family of 5, but we came to find out that there was only 4 in the camper because they were about to go pick up their daughter at camp the next morning. So we lost 2 infants and the parent.
It's just heartbreaking.
I do want to ask you a little more about, you have said in past interviews there was nothing to indicate that there was going to be a flood at your park. Was there anything that led you to believe you were all safe? Are there any questions you have for leaders about the warning systems in place?
I guess it's we get flash floods all the time. We have a lot of water crossings. They get flooded for any little bitty rain, and we all know what these low water crossings are. So we just go around them. You know, we go to higher crossings, and it's just very normal. And with the amount of rain that we had that night, it was not something that, you know, you would have think otherwise. So we did get a flash flood alert. I actually drove down to the edge of the river around 2:30 in the morning. I checked the water. I looked down at the river and it was fine. I even called the sheriff's department to find out what was going up upriver with the rain, and they had no information. What happened, it was just Mother Nature at its worst, and I don't think anybody could have predicted it, because we are a very, very close community. I know the sheriffs, I know the police officers. They come to my restaurant with their families. We know each other, and I know that if anybody would have known anything immediately, I would have gotten a phone call or anything like that, because that's what we do. Anything like between our, you know, restaurant owners, if there is a suspicious individual, we call each other and we help each other out. So in regards to better alert, I don't know how can we gotten any better, you know? Maybe it's our own fault for having too many flash floods alerts. I don't know.
Lorena, I do also want to ask you about an employee of yours who we understand died while trying to rescue his family, and it just sounds like he was a hero to the end. Can you tell us more about him and what happened and how his family's doing?
Well, his wife, she's devastated, obviously. I've been talking to her, and we're gonna, you know, we try to do the best we can to bring awareness to their situation, because they're just a couple kids with 3 beautiful babies trying to make it into this world, you know. He was the sweetest, most polite, well-mannered kid. It's just that night he left here close to 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, we closed a little earlier because it started to rain, and I'm like, just go home, be safe. And I started getting the notifications some morning that he had passed, and it was just, I still can't believe it. The place where he was inside the restaurant, every time we all go by, it cringes your heart, and it's just unbelievable. You know, I'm gonna see Christina tomorrow, and we're gonna get a little gathering here at the restaurant, just you know, just to try to comfort each other out.
Lorena, we are so sorry for your loss. We are thinking of you and your community. Please keep us updated on everything that's happening, all right?
And the way you're supporting those around you and who work for you is pretty incredible. Thank you.
Thank you. And please, we need help. That is the one thing I cannot express enough. We are a tiny, tiny little part of this entire devastation. It goes for miles and miles.
We are thinking of you, as Joe said. We will stay in touch with you. Thank you so much, Lorena.
Thank you.
We do want to turn to some other news now. President Trump is doubling down on his threats of higher tariffs on trading partners around the world. The president insists the new August 1st deadline for countries to reach a trade deal is firm, saying there will be, quote, no extensions. He's also expressing frustration at Russian President Vladimir Putin over his invasion of Ukraine. NBC News senior White House correspondent Garrett Hake joins us with these latest developments. Garrett, good morning.
Hey, Joe, good morning. And yeah, foreign policy certainly the focus here over the last few days, with the president growing more and more visibly frustrated at Russia's leader over the recent weeks, with yesterday's profane dismissal of Putin's handling of their negotiations, the clearest sign yet that their relationship and Trump's stance on the war there may be changing. And it comes as the president is also stepping up the pressure on U.S. trading partners to strike deals to avoid high tariffs by the end of this month the latest, and he says final deadline he'll set.
Overnight, Russia launching a fierce attack against Ukraine, firing a record number of drones into the country, Ukraine says. Just hours after President Trump flashed frustration at Russian President Vladimir Putin for defying calls to end the war during a cabinet meeting Tuesday.
We get a lot of bull thrown at us by Putin, for you want to know the truth. He's very nice all the time, but it turns out to be meaningless.
The president, who as a candidate repeatedly said he'd end the war there on day one of his presidency, now says he's reviewing a bipartisan sanctions package against Russia. And asked about the Pentagon's pause of weapons shipments to Ukraine last week.
Did you approve of that pause?
We want to put defensive weapons, so we're sending some defensive weapons to Ukraine, and I've approved that.
So who ordered the pause last week?
I don't know. What did you tell me?
NBC News has reported that suspending the weapons shipment was a unilateral step by Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, according to congressional sources and a U.S. official. The sources say Hegseth has ordered pauses twice before. In both cases, his actions reversed days later. And President Trump making another foreign policy move overnight, once again ramping up his global trade war, announcing he'll send letters to at least 7 countries today, on top of 14 filed Monday, that set new tariff rates for each nation if they don't negotiate new trade deals with the U.S. this month.
Mostly it's just a little number in there. You'll pay 25%, 35%. We have some at 60, 70.
The president abandoning the 90 deals and 90 days goal set by the White House when his so-called reciprocal tariffs were first unveiled, then paused back in April, in favor of unilaterally deciding import tax rates and posting them in letters.
We can't meet with 200 countries. You have to do it in a more general way, but it's a very good way. It's a better way. It's a more powerful way.
And overnight, Moscow shrugging off President Trump's angry comments about Putin. The Kremlin's spokesman telling NBC News, "We are quite calm about this. Trump, in general, has a rather tough style in terms of the phrases he uses." Indeed. Joe?
All right, Garrett, thank you.
Well, the Supreme Court is allowing President Trump to move ahead with plans for mass government job cuts and downsizing of government agencies.
The justices said the administration's argument that the executive order was legal was, quote, likely to succeed. Those plans could lead to tens of thousands of jobs being axed.
NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalas is here to break it down for us. Danny, good morning. So that issue here was this California federal judge who had blocked those plans initially. But walk us through then how this got to the Supreme Court and what the order says.
Yeah, as is often the case with Trump executive orders, you have a flurry of litigation at the beginning, and a lot of the litigation is not about the substantive issues, but about what we're going to do until this case is resolved on the merits. And each side wants a pause of the other's action. So that's what happened here. At the lowest district court, the federal judge essentially paused the administration's executive order and the memorandum that came with it. That was appealed all the way up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has now reversed that. They've expressed no opinion on the individual plans to cut down workforces, but the initial executive order can now go forward. It is no longer paused.
So liberal Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson was the only justice to provide a written dissent. She says, quote, "This decision is not only truly unfortunate, but also hubristic and senseless. The Supreme Court order is only temporary, but can we start to maybe see some of these mass layoffs right away?"
Sure, because now the administration can administer this executive order and its memorandum in the way it sees fit until this litigation is resolved. And there will be more litigation on it. But the key is, what can the government do in the meantime while it's resolved? And I'll note that, even though there was I think about a 16-page dissent, the majority opinion, if it can be called that, was barely an opinion. There really wasn't a lot of work shown. Normally, when they decide restraining orders or injunctions, they go through a long, painstaking analysis. Here, they just concluded, look, they're likely to win on the merits, so they win here at the Supreme Court.
It's no surprise, I suppose, that the White House is praising this ruling, but what actually happens from here?
From here, the pause that the district court put on the case is now lifted, and it's really up to the administration how it moves forward and implements this executive order, because there are individual reductions in force that they're going to implement as a result of this. Those may be challenged, too, and the Supreme Court made a specific point that it's just the overall plan that may go forward. The issue of whether or not these other reductions in force are legal is not even before us.
Right. Danny Savalas, really important context. Thank you.
Much more to come here on this hour of Morning News Now, including the new push by some Democrats to force ICE agents to go maskless during immigration raids.
First, though, after the break, the federal investigation into an alleged scammer who used AI to send messages to high-ranking government officials while impersonating Secretary of State Marco Rubio. That's next. Stay with us. Welcome back. An internal State Department memo says the agency's trying to figure out who used artificial intelligence to impersonate Secretary of State Marco Rubio.
The unknown person or group sent text and voice messages to at least 5 top U.S. and foreign government officials last month. Highlights the growing concerns over the use of AI by scammers online. Here's NBC News correspondent Stephanie Gosk.
The State Department says there's no direct cyber threat and they're aware of the incident. But according to an internal memo obtained by NBC News, the agency is still warning U.S. diplomats to be aware of these attempts to impersonate Secretary of State Marco Rubio and the possibility that it could happen to other officials as well. An investigation is underway this morning into how AI was used to impersonate Secretary of State Marco Rubio and who's responsible for it. The State Department alerting U.S. diplomats in an internal memo obtained by NBC News, saying the alleged AI Rubio imposter contacted at least 5 high-level government officials, including 3 foreign ministers, a U.S. governor, and a member of Congress.
The department takes seriously its responsibility to safeguard its information.
According to the memo, State Department officials say the actor likely aimed to manipulate targeted individuals using AI-generated text and voice messages, reportedly using this email address and leaving voicemails on the messaging app Signal.
Tracking these things down is very difficult, but also extremely important. We want to know who is carrying out these attacks on our government officials.
This comes after another recent incident in D.C. with artificial intelligence used to imitate White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles in order to contact top Republicans and business executives, sources familiar with the matter telling the Wall Street Journal. The use of AI and the inability to determine what's real and fake becoming a growing concern. Scammers using deep fakes or digitally manipulated videos, images, and audio that look incredibly real online.
Reversing my hypertension in just 3 months.
One scheme even using our own Al Roker's likeness to sell a fake health remedy for hypertension.
It looks like me. I mean, I can tell that it's not me, but to the casual viewer, Al Roker's touting this hypertension cure.
Now, experts say it's becoming unbelievably easy to capture someone's voice and likeness using generative AI.
Think about the geopolitical implications. Think about the national security implications, where you are now on a call giving up top secret information because you don't know who you're talking to anymore.
Our expert also told us that because of the quickly advancing world of AI, it's difficult to spot a fake. But be aware, if something seems unusual, like an unexpected call from a loved one, call them back and check in to make sure, or consider having a code word with family so you know you are really talking to them. Back to you.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Well, there is a new push to try and stop immigration enforcement agents from wearing face masks while making arrests. 2 Senate Democrats are introducing a bill that would ban those face coverings during most operations and would require agents to wear visible ID. NBC News senior Homeland Security correspondent Julia Ainsley has more on this and why ICE wants to keep the masks on.
Video after video going viral on social of federal agents making arrests across the country.
He's an asylum seeker.
Many are masked, their identities concealed. The tactic, part of the effort to carry out the Trump administration's deportation agenda, becoming a flashpoint, with critics decrying the mask as a move toward authoritarianism.
Donald Trump's modern-day Gestapo is scooping folks up off the streets. They're in unmarked vans wearing masks, being shipped off to foreign torture dungeons.
And supporters rushing to shield agents' identities from public view and viral videos.
Agents who wear masks protect themselves and their families.
So is it new for agents to conceal their identities in this way while making arrests? 2 former senior ICE officials telling NBC News wearing masks to arrest immigrants is unprecedented, especially when agents are not arresting violent criminals. And it's not just online outrage. Groups ranging from the New York Bar Association to the Cato Institute sounding the alarm over the practice. One Democrat in the blue state of California, the epicenter of the immigration debate right now, trying to change it.
Well, we have a really bad situation happening now in California.
State Senator Scott Wiener introducing a bill aiming to ban law enforcement from hiding their faces when on duty.
We see people who we think are ICE agents basically wearing masks that are almost like ski masks, like the kind of masks you would expect someone to wear when they're robbing a liquor store. We don't know if they're actually federal agents or local police or just vigilantes, and it's creating just an atmosphere of terror in the community.
The Department of Homeland Security firing back, telling NBC News the masks protect agents from being targeted by gangs, adding that assaults on ICE agents are up nearly 700%. But they did not provide raw numbers. They also said in a press release that repeated vilification and demonization of ICE from Democrats is contributing to the surge. The California bill potentially opening the door to a longer legal battle over whether states can mandate the actions of federal law enforcement.
The critical question is, are these masks part of some operational necessity? If they are, if it's part of the ICE agent's mission, then there's virtually no way the states would be able to regulate it.
Perhaps a risky bet that could backfire on Democrats.
The Trump administration may want to see that case go up to the Supreme Court if they expect a favorable decision.
Democrats in the House and Senate also putting forward separate bills, trying to get immigration officers to not wear masks and display clear identification with a new federal law. Another reason ICE says its agents are masking is because they're being doxxed, when private information is made public because of the work they do.
People are out there taking photos of the names, their faces, and posting them online with death threats to their family and themselves. So I'm sorry if people are offended by them wearing masks, but I'm not going to let my officers and agents go out there and put their lives on the line and their family on the line because people don't like what immigration enforcement is.
And in Washington, here's Republican Senator Marsha Blackburn.
I also introduced legislation that would make it illegal to dox federal immigration officials who are working to protect our communities.
Blackburn's new bill, if passed, would punish such doxers with a fine or up to 5 years in jail. The act of publishing somebody's personal information without their consent is not necessarily illegal, but one can lose their First Amendment protections if the intent is to threaten, harm, or harass. And a number of states have enacted anti-doxing laws already.
They try to silence us, the louder we will be.
An even more challenging free speech issue, masked protesters, often seen as the flip side of masked agents. President Trump calling for masks to be banned at protests just last month. The effort, not new to a post-COVID world. In fact, the International Center for Not-for-Profit Law says at least 18 states already have laws that restrict masks. Many on the books for decades, originally passed as a response to the Ku Klux Klan, which terrorized its victims anonymously. But such laws, rarely enforced, haven't been directly addressed by the Supreme Court.
If states prohibit specific protesters, especially based on the content of their speech and their protest, then you start getting into constitutional problems.
Unresolved constitutional problems surrounding anonymous protest and concealed law enforcement now playing out in the streets of America.
Thanks to Julia for that report.
Now to France, where a fast-moving wildfire has injured dozens of people.
Matt Bodner joins us now with that and more world news in 60 seconds. Matt, good morning.
Savannah, Joe, good morning. More than 100 people have been injured by wildfires that have encroached on the French city of Marseille. Firefighters have been working nonstop to prevent the fires from actually entering France's second largest city. And as of today, they report that they have the situation under control. The blaze was started when a car caught fire in a small village about 8 miles north of the city. Winds have been high in the area, and by late Tuesday night, it had spread 1,700 acres. The fire forced a temporary halt to air, rail, and road traffic in the region. Moving along now to China, Beijing has announced export controls on 8 enterprises linked to Taiwan's military. The move coincides with Taiwan's annual military exercises, and the controls apply to Taiwan-based organizations involved in aerospace and shipbuilding. China justifies the move on national and regional security concerns. The new rule essentially forbids any Chinese company from exporting dual-use items, that would be things that can be used for either military or civilian purposes, to these 8 companies. And we'll wrap up this hour right here in the UK. Wimbledon's new electronic line calling system had a glitch during the quarterfinal match between Taylor Fritz and Karen Khachanov yesterday. The bug took place during the opening game of the fourth set. Fritz was serving 15-0. The players exchanged shots, and then the system called a fault. The umpire stopped play and called for a redo. The system actually tracked Fritz's shot as a serve. Khachanov won, but won the replayed point, but Fritz won in the end. Back to you guys.
Americans still doing well. Ben Shelton playing center later today.
Exactly.
Thanks,
Very
Matt.
exciting.
Coming up, an urgent health crisis is taking a toll on America's children.
And it's not only a striking rise in obesity rates that parents should be on the lookout for. We're going to explain. That's next on Morning News Now.
Back now with a closer look at what's making news in the world of politics this morning, starting with the congressional investigation into President Biden's mental fitness.
NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Melanie Zanona has the latest. Mel, good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Joe and Savannah. Biden's doctor in the hot seat today. Kevin O'Connor, the former White House physician who treated President Joe Biden, will appear for a closed-door deposition on Capitol Hill this morning. Republicans on the House Oversight Committee are probing Biden's mental fitness while in office, fueled by new reports about the president's cognitive decline. The panel scheduled interviews with a number of former Biden aides, but the committee had to issue a subpoena to compel O'Connor's testimony. Biden has dismissed the investigation and insisted he was entirely in charge during his presidency. Trump's big, beautiful bill is causing some big, beautiful backlash. Medical students are worried about a new student loan cap that was quietly tucked into the massive tax and spending cut package. That provision would make it harder for thousands of aspiring doctors to finance their educations, all as the country faces a growing shortage in that profession. Under the law, loans for professional programs such as medical, dental, or law school will be capped at $50,000 a year, with a total limit of $200,000. Without the ability to take out more federal loans, students say they will have to turn to private loans, which can have stricter borrowing or repayment options, or potentially put off their medical school plans altogether. And finally, the Wisconsin Supreme Court clears the way for a conversion therapy ban to be enacted in the state. Conversion therapy is the scientifically discredited practice of using therapy to convert LGBTQ people to heterosexuality or traditional gender expectations. A ban on the practice has been blocked twice now by Wisconsin's Republican-controlled legislative committee, which the court ultimately ruled was unconstitutional. The ruling also gives the governor more power over how state laws are enacted. And that's what's making news in politics this morning, guys.
All right, Mel, thank you so much. Well, now we have some health news regarding America's children. A new JAMA study found that kids' health in the U.S. has gotten significantly worse over the last 17 years.
The report says more young people are hitting puberty earlier and struggling with obesity, sleep issues, mental health problems, and chronic illness.
We have NBC News medical contributor, our friend Dr. Kavita Patel, here to explain what is driving this health decline. Dr. Patel, good morning. So just some information on how this all worked. Researchers analyzed this broad set of health indicators. This was for kids 2 to 19. This was from 2007 to 2023. What are some of the findings that stood out the most to you? There's one on our screen right now about obesity. And tell us how concerned parents should be.
Yeah, 17 years of data, and not only Savannah and Joe did they look at the United States, but they compared it to other countries that are similar to the United States, countries where we should see similar outcomes for children. I think what stood out to me, you just flashed some of the increased rates of obesity, some of the symptoms that they documented, increased loneliness, early onset of puberty. But I think what's even more striking, Savannah, Joe, is that this is not just kind of things we would have expected. We know that there's a higher rate of obesity, but what we didn't anticipate is that there's so many factors driving basically a lower survival rate, meaning we are dying, our children are dying at an increased rate, and from their birth, about 1.8 times more likely to die than children in similar countries. So that alone should trouble every policymaker, parent. And I think parents have had an instinct that this is happening. Things are different. They're not like what was when I was a kid. I feel that way as a parent. And I think this just shows that what we thought in our gut instinct is right, and we have to do something about it.
So what are those factors? Why is this happening?
Yeah, so I think that there's a very clear trend with obesity and nutrition. We've talked about that here on the show, a lack of exercise, lack of physical activity into the school curriculum. I think what might be surprising are some of the researchers' findings, and these are just kind of correlations. So there's not this one thing that we can point to that says this causes this, but these are patterns that we see in the United States, everything from environmental policy. So we just don't have great policies to restrict dust, exposure to cockroaches, things that can trigger children's asthma and actually increase that mortality. Then added to that, and we just are talking about the big, beautiful bill, there's restrictions on nutrition. Adequate nutrition, even subsidized nutrition during school lunches is a problem. We have too many children, as many as 1 out of 4 children who go hungry or are undernourished. And then add to that just social policies. We don't have parental family leave. If you've got working parents, which most families do, what do you do if you need daycare for your children or after school care? All of this is adding up to these statistics.
The study also revealed, this one is kind of scary, American children were nearly twice as likely to die in the last 15 years than kids in other wealthy countries. Why is that?
Yeah, and some of this is the very kind of top 3 causes: firearms, death by suicide, traffic accidents. That's what every pediatrician tries to counsel parents on so you can avoid these accidents. However, I think that just in addition to that, it's not just the obesity or the loneliness or social media, it's all of the above. And I think that we're all struggling to figure out, well, what's the one thing we could do that could make a big difference in reversing that trend? And I think what we're finding out, Savannah, it's not just one thing, that we're going to have to do a lot of hard things, but as we like to say, as a lot of us like to say, we can do hard things. We just have to put our mind to them, especially with our children.
It's a good attitude to have there. Very quickly, just what does this research about kids tell us about the overall health of the U.S. population?
Yeah. So kids are, I like to say kids are not small adults, but kids do give us a glimpse into what happens with all of us, no matter how we age. And just think about it. We're all living longer. Put this into contrast. We just talked about how kids are more likely to die, but I will also offer that we are living longer because we're doing a better job at diagnosing cancers and chronic conditions and treating them. But what's overall happening is that we're creating a society that really is not going to be self-sufficient. Joe, we're not going to be able to take care of ourselves because of the limitations that we're creating from our own health and our policies.
Dr. Kavita Patel, important information. Thank you. Great to see you. Coming up, we've got some welcome news for your wallet on this Wednesday morning.
If you're looking to grab some new wheels or maybe take on a home project this summer, we'll tell you how cash can actually end up back in your pocket. That is next on Morning News Now. Back with a look at how you could save some money this summer.
Yeah, if you're thinking about maybe taking on a home project or buying a new car, there might be rebates available that could put cash right back in your pocket.
NBC News Business and Data correspondent Brian Chung is here to break down what is out there and how to find it. Brian, good morning. So let's start with home upgrades. A lot of folks might want to spend their summer doing renovation projects, because why not?
Yeah, look, I know a lot of people might be rolling their eyes at the thought of a rebate. You have to do all this paperwork to get your money back.
So
but what
true.
we're talking about,
what is a rebate?
It's a way for you to pay full price and then get refunded like months after the fact. It's a really genius idea. But either way, it's a way to get thousands of dollars back. And when it comes to those home upgrades, especially during this hot summer, if you're trying to get a new air conditioner, you can get up to $600 back in tax credits on your tax returns by making sure that you're buying something that is energy efficient. But it's not just air conditioners, heat pumps, exterior doors, windows and skylights, insulation materials, again, in totality, up to $3,200 for energy efficient. So again, it does have to be eligible, but if you get an appliance that is certified and does meet the federal tax credit standard, you can get a lot of money back.
So you just tell us about like the environmental aspect of it being a qualification. Anything else? So can all homeowners do this?
Yeah, so it is a federal tax credit, so every state is eligible. But in addition to that, there are some states that are taking advantage of Inflation Reduction Act tax credits to offer an additional up to $14,000 in federal rebates. Some of these programs are rolling out, so it's not all states covered yet, but the ones that have already launched, New York, Wisconsin, California, among the states that have portals already on their energy websites where you can see if it's an Energy Star efficient air conditioner, for example, that might qualify for a rebate. I want to point out there are a few caveats to this. First off, it depends on your income level. And then secondly, it also depends on the contractor that might be doing the installation in addition to the retailer where you bought that specific item from. So just double check the eligibility using those websites to make sure you qualify.
Do the research. You want to be the person who buys the thing and then doesn't get the rebate.
Yep.
All right. How about a new car if you want to get one of those?
Yeah, well, when it comes to a new car, there are some rebates that can save you thousands of dollars as well, up to $7,000 for some Jeep, Ram, Hyundai products. But you can even get a few $1,000s off of Toyotas and some Volvos.
Ooh, Costco members, baby.
Yes, this is one that people might not realize. You can actually get some discounts through your Costco membership, up to $3,000 for some vans. For other commercial vehicles, a little closer to $1,250. But in addition to your $1.50 hot dog, you can also get a few $1,000s off a car.
Okay.
A rebate on the hot dog.
The more you know. Yeah.
Oh my God, I love the Costco hot dog. Is there somewhere that we can go to see all this information?
Yeah, well, look, it's a lot to take in, and again, a lot of homework that's involved here. But when it comes to automotive rebates, check out Kelley Blue Book, Edmunds, and also ask your car dealership for all the rebates that are available. If you're doing a home upgrade, when you're buying something from Best Buy or Home Depot, they'll often at times tell you, hey, here are the rebates that you might be eligible for, not just necessarily for federal tax credits, but also for the manufacturer rebates as well, more that might involve more paperwork. But again, if it means thousands of dollars in savings, it's a good day. Don't leave the store.
Money.
Don't leave money on the table. That's what I always say.
All right. Thanks, Brian. Appreciate it.
Yep.
That's what I always say. There's more money news now. It looks like Meta is making some moves in wearable AI, and it's bringing Ray-Ban along for the ride.
CNBC's Savannah now has that and some other financial headlines. Savannah, good morning.
Joe, Savannah, good morning to you. Yeah, Meta has reportedly bought a minority stake in Ray-Ban maker EssilorLuxottica as consumers become more interested in AI-powered wearable devices. Now, both companies haven't commented. Meta teamed up with Oakley last month to launch AI smart glasses after the success of Ray-Ban Meta glasses, which have sold millions of units since hitting the market in 2023. Brock, that's the chatbot developed by Elon Musk's startup xAI, is removing what it calls inappropriate social media posts. And that's after complaints by users on X and the Anti-Defamation League that Brock is producing anti-Semitic content and is praising Adolf Hitler. Now, last month, Musk promoted an upgrade to Grok, suggesting there was far too much garbage on AI models trained on uncorrected data. Now, issues of political bias, hate speech, and accuracy have been a concern since the launch of OpenAI's ChatGPT in 2022. And Gmail has a new tool to help you declutter your inbox. The Manage Subscriptions feature is rolling out on the web and on Android and iOS devices, and users can view and manage their subscription emails in one place and quickly unsubscribe from those they no longer want to receive. Active subscriptions are organized by the most frequent senders. Gmail will send an unsubscribe request to the sender on your behalf.
Oof. All right. My Gmail is wild scary.
Oh my God.
The stuff, the number, because I don't use my work email, to dump like any type of promotional email, it is bad.
Yeah.
Bad.
Maybe that'll help.
Ooh, maybe. I don't know. It's going to be like,
Savannah.
We reject your ask. Thank you. Well, in the latest twist to the long-running Fyre Festival saga, founder Billy McFarland is selling the rights to the brand on eBay. McFarland's Instagram page links to the online auction, which includes the brand name, social media accounts, and plans for a sequel to the festival. This morning, bidding had reached over $200,000. The move comes after McFarland had to abandon plans for a Fyre Festival 2 that was planned in Mexico after a series of problems. Now, of course, the first festival in 2017, it became basically synonymous with catastrophe. Attendees stayed in disaster relief tents and were served cheese sandwiches in foam boxes, the viral pictures seen around the world. It led to McFarland going to prison for lying to those investors.
Now he could make $1 million.
He is saying that he has an offer for $1 million
to
buy the brand. I mean, it's really something.
Okay.
Always something new here.
We'll see what happens. Coming up, we are taking a bite out of streaming's latest content craze.
After the break, it's a summertime sensation that's got Hollywood betting big on something that lurks deep beneath the ocean surface. We'll explain next.
Story, live from the Pacific Palisades, live in Tel Aviv, live tonight from New Orleans.
Every weeknight, it's your news playlist. Top Story with Tom Llamas, streaming weeknights at 7 on NBC News Now.
What do you say to Americans who say they voted for you because they won and they need relief?
Do you think that the country is currently in a constitutional crisis?
Bottom line, is it safe to fly in the United States right now? If it's Sunday, it's Meet the Press.
We're back now with the shark streaming wars. The apex predator that rules the ocean has also been ruling our screens.
That is especially true over the summer when documentaries and then, of course, things like Shark Week or Shark Fest have become appointment viewing. And now audiences are being served even more shark bait across a variety of streaming platforms.
NBC News correspondent Marissa Parra joins us now from outside Miami with a deep dive into the growing trend. Marissa, good morning.
Hey guys, good morning from the shark bite capital of the world. Now, when you hear that, of course, it might sound a little scary, but when you really put it into the context of just how often people are around sharks without even knowing it, there's more research that shows just how often swimmers are actually nearby a shark. It is statistically extremely rare to get bitten by a shark when you look at those numbers. That's the kind of information that Shark Week and all kinds of shark programming, if you will, hopes to debunk and demystify.
Lurking just beneath the ocean surface is bait Hollywood just can't resist.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
From the first pulse-pounding notes in Jaws, sharks have had audiences hooked ever since. Now, Netflix, the big fish in the sea of streaming, is testing the waters, debuting the gripping new documentary, Shark Whisperer, and a new reality docuseries, All the Sharks. And the timing is no coincidence. Discovery made a huge splash when it first debuted Shark Week way back in 1988.
Shark Week programming was kind of starting to come online around the same time that scientists were starting to get concerned about population declines among sharks.
The programming has become a cultural phenomenon.
Live every week like a Shark Week.
That's such power. It's raw power.
Dad, what are you doing? It's Shark Week.
With the likes of National Geographic and Animal Planet joining in to churn out shark content. But once a ratings juggernaut, reportedly reeling in more than 53 million viewers for Discovery in 2013, Shark Week viewership has taken a bit of a dip in recent years, with Warner Brothers Discovery announcing 25 million viewers across its platforms last year. Now, Netflix is circling the waters with its own content, like the new documentary featuring conservationist Ocean Ramsey.
People fear what they don't understand, and that's something that I'm trying to help not just dispel, but to replace that fear with knowledge on how we can coexist.
It was over a decade ago when videos of Ramsey free diving with sharks first made waves on social media. But her popularity, garnering millions of viewers, has come with some criticism on her hands-on approach.
I'm going to stay focused on the sharks, and I'm going to try and save as many as I possibly can.
This year's summer shark content already filling up across platforms, including a re-release of Jaws, returning to theaters later this summer for its 50th anniversary. A testament to the long-lasting power and allure of the predators of the sea that we just can't get enough of.
And Joe, I know that you actually got a chance to visit the filming location of Jaws, so you know all about the 50th anniversary celebrations, the re-release. You probably also know that one of the individuals who was a part of the movie-making process actually ended up regretting the impact that that movie had on shark populations and ended up using the rest of his life to devote himself to conservation and, you know, in part participating in these kinds of educational programs that demystify what is really a misunderstood animal.
Yeah, we've seen a boost in conservation over the years, too, because of Jaws. All right, Marissa, thank you so much.
That reminds me, where's my Jaws lunchbox?
Oh, it's at home. I got to bring it in. I do have it. That does it for this hour of Morning News Now.
Stay with us. The news continues right now.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.